Hey everyone, professional outdoor photographer David Johnston here for Outdoor Photography Guide, and in this video let's talk about wildlife photography settings. Now, while there's a range of scenarios that you could do for wildlife photography, I think there are some basics that you can nail every single time you go out and try to photograph your wildlife. You need to think about first, what are you trying to capture here? And with wildlife, it's speed and it's motion. So what camera setting involves speed and motion? It's your shutter speed. So with wildlife photography, you're gonna need a pretty quick shutter speed to get started. I recommend using anything over 1/1000th of a second, all the way up to 1/2500th of a second, and even faster if you can balance the light that way, because you're trying to capture everything that's going on in the wildlife scene. Animals are unpredictable and they're fast moving. So you need to adapt to what they're doing, and that is by using a faster shutter speed. Now, the second thing you need to decide is, what do you want the composition to look like? And when I'm talking about that, are you trying to match the animal with the actual landscape that you're photographing, or are you trying to seclude that animal out from the landscape? Let's tackle the first scenario. If you're trying to include the wildlife into the landscape, I'd recommend using something like f8, because that's going to capture it with the landscape in the surrounding area. Now, if you're trying to seclude out your wildlife, what you need to remember and do is use a wide aperture. What this is going to do is going to create a lot of blur both in front and behind the animal, and seclude them out from the landscape and get that really dialed in portrait of your wildlife. This is probably the most popular way to photograph wildlife, and one of the most fun, but also one of the most challenging. So be patient with it and use something like autofocus tracking when you're using this as well. Now, to match the fast shutter speed, what you're going to want to use is a continuous shooting mode. This could be something like AI servo or autofocus continuous shooting. All these settings are perfect for wildlife photography because, again, wildlife is fast moving, unpredictable, and you don't know what's going to happen next. When you're able to photograph in a fast sequence, something like 10 frames per second, all the way up to 20 frames per second, you're able to capture all of those unique moments in a sequence of events and not miss the shot that you're trying to get. This video and the products included are brought to you by my friends at MPB. Now, I'm sure you've heard me talk about MPB before. They're the largest global platform to buy, sell, and trade your used photo gear. Now, let me ask you this. Do you have photo gear sitting at home collecting dust? Well, MPB is the simple, safe, and circular way to trade in that photo gear and get paid. Now, don't get me confused. MPB is not a marketplace. They buy directly from visual storytellers just like you, and they go through a rigorous process of being approved and resold on the MPB approved options. Their dynamic pricing engine provides the right price up front, and on average, their pricing on gear is a third less than new gear. Now, circularity is the center to what MPB does. All of their packaging is plastic free, and their cloud-based platform uses renewable energy. MPB has served over 625,000 visual storytellers and counting, while recirculating over 500,000 products annually. In fact, over 2,000 items are added to their site every single week. And if you're interested, you can definitely contact them through their help center and talk to a gear expert right now. So again, thank you to our friends at MPB. Check them out at mpb.com today. Lastly here is ISO. Now, when I'm thinking about ISO, I'm always thinking about how can I use my ISO to balance out what the exposure and what the light is actually doing in the landscape. Are my other two settings, which I'm not too interested in changing too much, are they making the photo too dark, or are they making the photo too bright? Based on that, I'm going to either raise or lower my ISO. Something like an ISO of 100 will make the photo darker, but it will also introduce less image noise into the photo. Now, an ISO of something like an ISO 1600 and up, 3200 and even further, what it's going to do is make the photo brighter, but it's also going to introduce a little bit more image noise into the photo. Now, image noise isn't a huge deal anymore based on the technology that we have in post-processing to clean up and denoise that photo, but it is something to consider when you're using your ISO. Remember, the ISO makes your camera sensor more sensitive or less sensitive to the light that's coming in, and you use that ISO to balance out the light that's available in your photo. Hey, using these settings is going to be perfect for your wildlife photography, and I know you're gonna nail the shots the next time you go out and get them.